Okay, everybody, it is 5:45. I just want to kind of run through who's here with us. We are live streaming on YouTube. This is Scranton City Council's caucus. It is Tuesday, I almost said September, Tuesday, April 14th at 5:45 p.m. So we have Councilman Donahue. Councilman, can you hear me okay? And is your mic working okay?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman McAndrew, you are here with us. I can see your picture. You can hear me okay?
Yep, Billy.
Okay. Dr. Rothchild, you are here with us. I can see you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay. Councilman Schuster, I can see you. You can hear everything okay?
I can hear fine.
Okay, we have Jeff Horvath from the Scranton Times here. We have Kathy Carrera here. Kathy, you can hear us okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And we have our city clerk, Lori Reed here. Lori, you're good. You can hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So just to reiterate, I think I said this last week, when you're not speaking, if you could just put yourself on mute, just so there's no feedback. For those of you calling in, I think that's only Lori and Kathy, just make sure you hit *6 to unmute yourselves. And I think the only person we're waiting on is Kevin Hayes, but I'm sure he'll be here in a minute or two. So we're going to get started, everybody. Today, first thing I'll do is just go over our agenda briefly. Today on the agenda, it's pretty light. We have several items in third order on the agenda for tonight. A few items from Mayor Cognetti there that we discussed last week, and we have a letter from Pennsylvania American Water, and we also have a letter, I believe, from PennDOT on the bridges throughout the city. I think we discussed that a little bit last week. We don't have any agenda items in fifth or sixth order. We only have two pieces in seventh order. That would be the OECD piece, in which we had the public hearing last week that we discussed with the executive director, Mary Pat Ward, and the deputy director, Tom Parambo. And we also have in seventh order the resolution appointing Al Lucas as the fire chief. So that's the agenda for this week. Does anybody have any questions, comments, anything that they want to talk about in terms of the agenda? Nope. Okay. Hi, Kevin. Kevin Hayes is here, our solicitor. Kevin, can you hear us?
Sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties.
No, that's all right. Okay, so Kevin, we were I was just going over the agenda. I just explained, as you know, it's light. We only have two pieces on there, and we have several third order items. So no one really has any questions or anything they want to discuss in terms of the agenda items.
Bill,
yes.
Bill, just in terms of the agenda, we haven't gotten any information from the administration on where they're going to be pulling, what line item they're going to be pulling to increase the fire chief's salary.
I was talking about this question today with Solicitor Hayes briefly, and I remember the mayor stating that when she was here in our caucus, I think 2 weeks ago, that they were using unexpended monies from the, was it the assistant fire chief or some other position that's not filled in the fire department? I think that was the explanation that was given.
All right. I'd prefer to table that until we get that information of where that's actually coming from. Okay.
I understand. I'm not going to be in favor of that, tabling it, only because I think, we are in the middle of a crisis, and this gentleman is the kind of heading up the emergency management response, and he is the emergency management coordinator. So I would be concerned to table it another week. Not that maybe would have a big impact, but at this point, I don't have any doubts that the administration would respond to any request that we made. So
I mean, but we requested information on the furloughs 4 weeks ago and still haven't gotten anything there either. So,
Right, I
I mean,
understand that.
this whole
and-
taking your word for it is, I mean, you know, we went through that, I know, together for at least 2 years, and I don't want to get back into that
No,
routine either. So it's
No,
not
I
more, it's not
understand.
trust us, it's provide it, and you know, we'll move on from there.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a totally different administration than, in terms of the mayor, at least, than the previous one that we had to deal with. To me, it's night and day. But the only thing I would say to that is I actually spoke to the mayor a couple of minutes ago, and I had brought this issue up again, and I don't foresee any issues in terms of getting a response there in writing. But she had verbally told me again that the monies were coming from that position that was not filled. And I had expressed to the mayor, as I did 2 weeks ago, that I don't agree with the salary being where it is. I think it should be at what was budgeted, for all the reasons that I said 2 weeks ago. But I understand where you're coming from, Kyle. I just don't think it makes sense to table the legislation. And in terms of the furloughs, the administration, and Kevin, you can attest to this because you were in touch with them as well. We're going to have an executive session regarding some of the labor issues that have been brought up next Tuesday at 4:30. So
Yeah, and
prior to our council meeting.
And that's covering the the labor issues, but just from a pure budgetary standpoint, I mean, one of council's functions is to approve a budget, which the previous council did in December. And if we're going to drastically alter a budget, I think council needs to be a part of that process too. And when I say drastically alter, I'm guessing if the impact is going to be in the millions of dollars, I would consider that drastically altering it. So, I mean, I understand that we have Mr. Uffberg coming in next week, to go over some of the labor issues. But just from a pure budgetary standpoint, we still haven't gotten that information of what we're saving, how we're saving it. And then if we're going to increase, from what was budgeted out for a salary increase, basically, like, I'm not against the argument for it, but all I'm saying is we got to justify it.
Right. And I think that hopefully those questions will be answered next week. But I mean, in terms of what's on the agenda tonight, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm not in favor of tabling the appointment of Val Lucas. I just think that it doesn't make sense to not appoint the emergency management coordinator in the middle of an emergency, which is the crisis.
But he's acting as emergency management coordinator now, and he has been for the last month. So it's not like they're waiting for our approval for him to actually perform those functions. He's performing those functions now.
Right, but okay, well then just explain to me again, what would be the point of tabling it? Like, what are we trying to
get an answer to our, just for justification on where that we're pulling this money from. I just think it's the prudent thing to do from a budgetary aspect.
Right, and the mayor had explained, I think 2 weeks ago, and again, I don't agree with the way that they did it, but they did explain where that money came from. If we want that in writing, I would support that. And we can send that correspondence out. But I just don't think it makes sense to table it. That's just my opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels that.
So when we're looking at that money that's being pulled up from another line item, and we're talking about salary from an assistant fire chief, are we talking about Al Lucas's or Mr. Lucas's previous salary? Is that where that's coming from, and it's not going to be filled?
I don't know, to be honest with you. That's the way that it was explained from the mayor. But I mean, look, the bottom line here is, in all of this, we are in the middle of a crisis. To me, it does not make sense not to officially appoint. And Kyle is right. Al Lucas has been the fire chief and the emergency management coordinator acting since January. But to maybe try to send a message here, try to hold up an appointment to get an answer that I think we're going to get and what was already explained verbally, I just don't think that's right to do in the middle of a crisis.
Well, it wasn't explained verbally. It was just that they were going to pull from a different line item within the department, but where? That wasn't explained to us.
Well, then we can, certainly I'd be in favor of having Kevin draft a letter, and we'll send that letter out and ask for the information. But like to table it, to say, okay, we're going to table this until we get the information, I don't know. I don't agree with it.
I have a quick question. So are there any other firefighters in the assistant chief capacity now?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know.
Because if they are, then there's no money coming. That's being used now.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing it out there. It's just a question that
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm sure that they'll be able to explain that to us. But again, what we're voting on tonight is the appointment of Al Lucas as the fire chief and the emergency management coordinator. I personally don't think tabling that makes any sense at this point.
I mean, the action of tabling it, what are we doing there? We're just going to hold off the salary. He's still in that capacity as far as.
But I understand that, but table it. I don't understand that. Table it for what? To say we're going to table this and we'll vote on it when you give us the answer? I disagree with the way that they did it, but so far, this administration, at least as far as I'm concerned, has not done anything in terms of stonewalling the council to make me think that we would have to hold a piece of legislation up to get an answer. I don't think we're at that point yet. And again, as I stated, I just don't think it makes sense to hold up a piece of legislation where we're officially appointing the person who's running the lead on emergency management response during the emergency. So.
Yeah, I would agree that it's frustrating that we have questions that we haven't received responses to on several issues, including the staff furloughs. But I'm prepared to vote on this tonight. I mean, if we didn't approve it, what would happen then anyway? I think he's still been appointed by her to the position with that salary. Do we have the power to change that? I don't know.
Kevin, what do you think about that question? Your microphone's not on. Okay. Nope.
Oh.
Yep, I can hear you now. You're good.
Okay. You can hear me, Bill?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. There's not, as far as from a practical standpoint, whether we vote on this or whether we don't vote on this, nothing changes because Al Lucas is going to get paid what he's getting paid when the appointment gets finalized. The only thing you have to consider is, whether you want to make this a precedent for, what level of detail the council is going to want when these outer budget allocations of funds are made. In other words, there's a budget for $83,000 for the fire chief. He's going to get paid $95,000. It's all a matter of whether the council is going to be in favor of that or whether they want greater detail before that's done. That's the issue.
So just to add on that, what I think, so in terms of the appointment, Al Lucas is the fire chief. He's the emergency management coordinator. That's not going to change whether we table it, don't vote on it, That's besides the point. The issue here is, as far as I'm concerned, the mayor kept Al Lucas at his salary that he was in as the acting fire chief, which was $95,000 and some odd dollars, which I don't agree with, as I have stated, for the pure fact that when the fire chief is budgeted at $84,000, and to go outside of the budgeted line item means that you're circumventing council's authority and really the public's input, which they give during the budgetary process. If you want to increase a salary during the budgetary process and present that to council, then I'm all for hearing that and debating it. What I think, though, in terms of this issue is maybe, because this has happened once before now under the previous administration of Wayne Evans, where did a little bit of different circumstances, but really the same thing. So what I would recommend, and I have talked about this with Solicitor Hayes, is why not draft legislation then to prohibit increasing any salary outside of the budget? That would make more sense than, tabling the legislation to appoint Al Lucas or anything like that. I personally think that would solve every problem.
I'm not opposed to passing that, but what other avenue do we have to get this information, to make sure we get this information?
But Kyle, when the mayor was here 2 weeks ago, she stated, this is why, this is where we're getting and she just stated it to me on the phone, this is where we're getting the unexpended balances from the position, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, that they haven't filled. So she answered that 2 weeks ago. I just talked to her on the phone. And I stated to her that, if we put this in writing and she said she would have no problem answering it. Again, I don't agree with the way they did it, but the question has already been answered. If we want it in writing, that's fine with me, and a little bit more detail and explanation. I have no problem with that, but I just don't think we have to hold up the legislation. That doesn't make sense to me. So, anybody else on that?
I mean, I could see where both of you are at. I understand Mr. Hayes's point as to say, we're allowing something to occur here where maybe we should wait for the information before we move ahead with it. I don't think anything changes,
But to wait for the information we've already received. I already know what they've already told us. Here's where we have not even pulled the money, because they're keeping them at the same salary. Again, I disagree with the way they did it. However, to say we're going to table it to wait for information, they've already given it to us. If we want it in writing, that's fine. But, and in speaking with Solicitor Hayes and what you just said, Kevin, I think is, in terms of this legislation, it has no bearing on, they're already keeping them at that salary. What control do we have if we tabled it? I just don't see the point in it, I guess, is my point. And again, in the context of being in the middle of a crisis and not officially appointing the emergency management coordinator, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not going to be in favor of it. But anybody else on that topic? No? Lori, do you have anything?
No, I don't, Councilman Gaughan. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lori. I had communicated with Lori today, just wanted an update, and she had emailed Arthur Moretti about the gas card update. I don't know where we left off with that. I'm sure that things have slowed down considerably because of the coronavirus crisis currently going on, but just basically Lori had sent an email out just touching base with him to see, where they were with that. Does anybody else have anything generally outside of the agenda?
Bill, just as I know this was noted earlier, that I have asked Labor Counsel Bob Buffberg to appear at Caucus next week to address the issue of the furloughing of city employees, as well as the role of Elizabeth Leo as a consultant to the city. And because he's the city's lawyer and he is going to be discussing labor-related issues, there may be items which require us to adjourn to an executive session. In addition, I had a conference with the city's law department to review additional emergency declarations and potential legislation to address issues that are arising. while we operate under this state of emergency. And I will be updating you throughout the week on those issues.
Okay, and I did just before the meeting received a email from the mayor at about 5 o'clock today. Just she attached extensions to the emergency declaration and proclamation through April 30th. So the declaration still needs the controller's signature, and that'll be apparently he'll sign that tomorrow. But that'll be sent out to everybody, or forwarded to everybody if it hasn't been already. And then that'll be on our third order next week on the agenda. So, Kyle, do you have anything else?
At the moment, no.
Mark, anything?
No.
Jess?
I was just going to mention earlier, tonight in seventh order, we're voting on the 5-year consolidated plan to be submitted to HUD. And I had a call earlier today with both Mrs. Ward and Mr. Priambo from OECD. So we had a really productive call, just reviewed a few things, some more questions that I had on it, and they were very helpful. So I'm looking forward to voting on that piece of legislation tonight so we could get it submitted and approved and get rolling with the grants.
Okay, that's great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tom, anything from you?
No, not at this time.
Okay. All right. Well, if no one has anything else, our regular meeting does not start until 6:30. So we don't have to adjourn the caucus, but if you want to just turn your webcams off and your microphones off, and we'll just kind of hold steady here until 6:30, and we'll get started right at 6:30. Okay. Okay, I'd like to call this public meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. We have our regularly scheduled Scranton City Council meeting. I would ask now if everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away recently in our community. Let us also take a special moment of silence tonight for people in our community and throughout the world who are suffering or who have passed away from the coronavirus. Let us think about them and their families at this time, that they may find peace. Let us think now about the doctors, nurses, researchers, and all medical professionals and first responders who seek to heal and help those affected and who put themselves at risk in the process. May they find protection and peace. Whether we are home or abroad, surrounded by many people suffering from this illness or only a few, let us stick together, endure together, mourn together, persist and prepare together. And in place of our anxiety, let us continue to hope and find peace. Thank you. Ms. Carrera, roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Present.
Mr. McAndrew,
Present.
Dr. Rothchild,
Here.
Mr. Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Gaughan.
Here. Thank you, Ms. Carrera. Mrs. Reed, please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, correspondence received from Pennsylvania American Water dated April 1, 2020, regarding update on projects and critical work. 3B, correspondence received from Mayor Paige G. Cognetti dated April 4, 2020, regarding Greyhound bus service. 3C, proclamation issued by Mayor Paige G. Cognetti dated April 6, 2020, with recommendations for retail stores. 3D, proclamation issued by Mayor Paige G. Cognetti dated April 6, 2020, with recommendations for community and faith-based organizations. 3E, correspondence received from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation dated April 1, 2020, regarding local bridge group replacements.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Are there any comments on any of the third order items?
So I'd just like to say I'm happy to see the continuation of these bridge projects. They're much needed improvements to the aging infrastructure in the city. And in those original 2003 studies on bridges in PA, several of the bridges were in our area, and I think two of the bridges that are on this list here were on that original list. So I'm happy to see that that work is going to be taking place.
I agree. Thank you. Anyone else on the question?
Just to sort of extend on what Mr. Schuster said, one of the bridges in this list is the Elm Street Bridge, which is going to be the permanent solution, to the problems that people are facing in Bellevue on 3rd Avenue and those other streets over there with truck traffic. That started because of weight restrictions on the Elm Street Bridge. So that is going to be the permanent fix. I know we're still trying to figure out a short-term solution, but that will be the permanent fix to that solution, or to that problem, excuse me.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I would just comment on the third order that we received from the mayor's office for like a letter for guidelines for religious organizations. I know that I think it was tough with the recent holidays with Passover and Easter for people to not congregate where they would normally. And I think that a lot of places in Scranton did a very good job of avoiding that and holding services online. So if places can continue to do that to their best of their ability, I understand it's a different way and certainly not the same, but I think it was important. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not received and filed, do any council members have any announcements at this time?
Just a reminder that if you haven't filled out your census form, to please do so. Census forms were mailed out, and a couple of reminders were mailed out in the past few weeks. To respond online, you could go to my2020census.gov. There's a lot of money out there that depends on the census over the next 10 years, so please take the 5 minutes and fill out your census form.
Thank you. Anyone else have any announcements? Okay, I have a few. First, if there's any groups or organizations offering free services or assistance to someone in need during this national emergency and you'd like to have that information available on ECTV, please email chrisectv@gmail.com. The wording of your email is exactly what they will publish on ECTV. If anyone would like to comment on agenda items, council agenda items, or city business, please send those comments in writing to our city clerk, Lori Reed, by emailing lreed@scrantonpa.gov. Council will accept public comment until the day of our meeting, Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Public comment is reviewed by the council prior to our meeting and is placed on the official record and in the minutes of our meetings. Council's agenda is being posted for public review the Friday before our Tuesday meeting, and our agenda and minutes can be accessed by going to www.scrantonpa.gov and clicking on the City Council page. And that is all I have. Mrs. Reed?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
Thank you. At this time, I'd ask if someone could please make a motion to accept public comment from the following individuals to be placed into the record and our official minutes of this meeting. Those citizens are Patty Fowler, Craig Beavers, Marie Schumacher, and Faye Franis.
I'll make a motion to accept those correspondence.
Thank you. There's been a motion, and is there a second?
Second.
On the question? On the question, I just would like to say that I have gone through every comment that has been submitted by members of the public, and I did put together a document of any of the questions that were posed to this council. The questions that were posed that would require information from the administration, I have sent those along to the mayor and the administration, and hopefully we will get an answer to those questions. Now, in saying that, I do know, just that the reality of the situation that we're currently in, some of these, the questions that were submitted on stormwater and overtime, they're not going to be maybe high priority at this point. So I do think we need to give a little bit of leeway in terms of a response to those, some of those questions, but I know that they will be addressed at some point. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. Mrs. Reed?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Councilman Schuster, do you have any motions or comments at this time?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Gaughan.
Okay, thank you. Councilman McAndrew, do you have any motions or comments at this time?
I do. I would like to commend the efforts and quick response time of the fire department, police department, and the DPW with regards to yesterday's horrific windstorm and their ongoing support they're providing during this pandemic. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman McAndrew. Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments at this time?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. And Councilman Donahue, do you have any comments or motions at this time?
I have nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. I just have two comments. As I mentioned in the caucus, if anyone had missed it, I did ask Mrs. Reed to check in with Arthur Moretti and his firm for an update on the audit of the gas cards in the city. As I stated earlier tonight, I do understand with the crisis going on that that process may have slowed a bit, and I don't know that it has been completed yet or where they are in the process, but I thought it was appropriate at this time just for council to check in to see where Mr. Moretti is. So hopefully we will receive a response there. The only other thing I want to say is that I just want to continue to implore people to stay home as much as they possibly can. As Dr. Rothchild mentioned, I think as a whole, the city is doing a pretty good job of following the recommendations and the guidelines from the federal government, the state government, and our local government. I just hope that people continue to have faith and hope in light of everything that's going on. I just think today's April 14th, and it was about a month ago when the shutdown started. So the past month has been extremely difficult for myself, my family, all of your families, everyone in the city of Scranton and in the state and the country and really in the world. And it may not seem like there's light at the end of the tunnel, but there is, and we will get through this together. So just want to continue to ask people to pay attention to those guidelines. And if we do that, I think the quicker we will resolve this crisis. And my last comment for tonight is I would like to wish my wife, Kelly, a happy birthday. Today's her birthday. And also wish my daughter, Maeve, a happy birthday. Her birthday was on April 6th, and she is a year old. So, thank you. That's all I have. Mrs. Reed?
5B, no business at this time. Sixth order, 6A, no business at this time. Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, file of the Council number 4, 2020, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate officials of the City of Scranton to take all necessary actions to implement the consolidated submission for community planning and development programs to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants Program for the 5-year consolidated plan, analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, and annual action plan for the period beginning January 1, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
Thank you. There's been a motion and a second on the question.
Yes, on the question,
The-
I spoke earlier with Mrs. Ward and Mr. Preambo and regarding this piece of legislation with just some additional questions that I had after taking the time to review it. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the hard work of OECD and all those involved in putting this together. They want to make sure that as a city, we receive as much as we can to help those in need for housing and to identify the most vulnerable communities, as well as just what our highest needs and priorities are here in the city, because that becomes unique to every place. And I know there was a lot of thought in putting this together, and the advisory committee had, which was composed of community members, had also worked hard on reviewing the surveys from our citizens to make sure that their concerns were appropriately addressed in this 5-year plan. So look forward to this.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. Anyone else on the question? I too want to thank the Executive Director, Mary Pat Ward. I want to thank the Deputy Director, Tom Preambo, the staff of OECD for all the work that they put into this. This, as Dr. Rothchild mentioned, is a very long process, and it does take a lot of hard work and a lot of input from the community. So I want to thank everyone involved. Anyone else on the question? Okay, roll call, please. Sorry, Ms. Carrera, roll call, please. Lori, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'll call roll.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution number 29, 2020, appointment of Alan Lucas, 2722 Bernie Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania 18505, to the position of Fire Chief, as well as Emergency Management Coordinator, effective March 23, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I'll recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, on the question. I'd like to just first say that, I've nothing against Al Lucas. I think he's doing a great job under extremely challenging circumstances at the moment. And I am sympathetic to the fact of the fire chief's salary being lower than it probably should. I just have a problem with the precedent that we're setting here by the administration increasing the salary while we're furloughing employees without council's approval. I think when you send down legislation that requires out-of-budget spending, there should be a detailed explanation to justify that and where the savings are coming from. Otherwise, you're just undermining, the budget process and the role council and the public both have to play in that process. For that reason, I would like to just table this legislation just until we get some detailed information exactly where in the fire department line items are they pulling this, and where were the savings that were expressed to us a couple weeks ago actually coming from?
And I'll give a second on that.
Okay, well, there was no motion made, so are you making a motion, Kyle?
I so I believe I did make the motion. If I didn't, I apologize for that. I would like to make a motion to table this legislation just until we get that detailed explanation back from the
Okay,
administration.
Is there a second
I'll second.
on the question of Kyle's motion? On the question, I'm going to be voting against Kyle's motion to table it. I agree with everything that he said, but I don't believe that at this time it makes any sense to table this legislation appointing the
Bill, I think we lost you. Bill just sent me a text that his computer froze. Just give him 1 minute.
Sorry, everybody, I froze there for a second. So let me, anytime it's windy out, it seems like my internet connection goes out a little bit. So let's recap here, just so I didn't.
You could start from the beginning.
Okay, so Kyle made a motion to table 7B. Tom seconded it, and now we're on the question of Kyle's motion. So before I speak, does anyone want to speak on the question of the motion to table the legislation?
Yeah, I mean, I share the same concerns as Kyle, and mine's a procedural problem that I'm having with regards to policy, and then and the budget issue. I mean, I'm not going to prolong this any longer. I'll vote no for the motion, but I don't really feel great about it, about the whole process. But I guess we need to move forward. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, as I said in our caucus, I am prepared to vote on this piece of legislation tonight. I don't agree with tabling it at this time, although I still have questions too.
Okay. Anyone else on the question? Thank you.
With that, I mean, I'd be in favor of tabling it till next week, but to vote it down would be a different story.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Yeah, on the question, I agree with everything that Councilman Donahue said. As I stated 2 weeks ago, I don't agree with keeping the salary at $95,000 some odd dollars. The fire chief's position in the budget is roughly $84,000. So I don't agree with that. However, in saying that, I don't agree with tabling this legislation, tabling this appointment, because I don't really know what, I guess I don't understand what the point of that would be. The administration and the mayor has told us that the unexpended salary is coming from a position that's not filled. We can certainly request and will request more information on that if everybody, if that's what everybody wants to do. But in terms of tabling it, when we're in the middle of a crisis and this person is the emergency management coordinator, to me doesn't make much sense. So I'll be voting against it. Anyone else on the question? Okay, motion's been made, it's been seconded. Everyone has stated their case here. So all those in favor of the motion to table item 7B, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
So the motion fails 3-2. Now we're back on the original legislation, item 7B. And we're still on the question here with this piece of legislation. Does anybody want to speak to the legislation on the question?
I'm going to be voting against this again, not because of Al Lucas in any way. Again, I think he's doing a tremendous job under difficult circumstances. But I just think we need, as a council, we need to not give up our budgetary authority and our part in that process. So without justification of savings of where that money for that salary increase is going to come from, I can't in good conscience vote for this.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? Okay. The only thing I would add is I don't believe that we're giving up our authority. The action has already been taken by the administration. So, you know, to vote against this or to table it, I don't think makes any difference. The horse is already out of the barn, so to speak. They've already set the salary at $95,000. And while I disagree with that, I think the legislative fix here is to entertain legislation prohibiting the mayor or her administration from raising salaries outside of the budget. And I would be in favor of that. But in terms of this legislation, again, we're in the middle of a crisis. We need an emergency management coordinator and a fire chief. And he already is the fire chief, was acting for a couple months. So I'll be voting for it.
And I think that's important to point out that he already is the fire chief and, you know, the emergency management coordinator, and it's not going to affect, you know, us passing this tonight or not isn't going to affect, you know, his status there and the ability to do his job. I just feel like, you know, if we're going to work together to get through this, and we still have challenging times ahead, especially with some of the lost revenues, I think we actually have to work together. It's not just, you know, just going along just to get along sort of thing. I think we actually have to work together, and we have to work these issues out. And, you know, we all have to do it, whether it's, you know, it's between us 5 council members and the administration as a whole. I think that's the only way we get through this, is getting through it together.
I agree. I don't see the point of voting against it or tabling it just because honestly, it just doesn't make sense to me at this time. So I'll be voting against it, or voting for it. Anybody else on the question?
So yeah, I mean, at this point in time, just my stance on this is, yeah, I would like to see some kind of justification for it, being that we're going to have a slight deficit this year with the budget and not knowing the effects of the situation we're in now, how that's going to play out.
And so the only thing I would add is, you know, even if we have it, again, I disagree. It should be $84,000. It's at $95,000. That's the difference of $11,000. So in terms of $20 or $30 million budget, it is a drop in the bucket.
Again.
Okay, am I back? Can you see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. All right, I was going to add something else, but you know what? I'm going to let it go because I'm afraid I'll freeze again. Okay, anyone else on the question?
Yeah, I mean, my concerns remain. I share concerns with everybody in this room. You know, it's on our plate right now, so please, moving forward, so we don't have these conversations again. Let's introduce the legislator to prevent this from happening again. Thank you.
Anyone else on the question?
I look forward to seeing additional legislation in the future to prevent this issue from happening again.
Thank you. I agree. Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, Bill, I apologize for 7A because my phone dropped the call when you asked me to call roll. So I'll do 7B, and then if you can back and do 7A.
Oh, that's okay. Lori actually, I figured something happened, Kathy, because Lori did the roll call. So we're good with 7B, and I froze, so don't worry about it. It's happening.
Okay.
It happened to the both of us.
Okay, Mr. Schuster?
No.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
No.
Mr. Gaughan?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted. If there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
I'll
adjourn.
make that motion. Okay, second.
Second.
Sorry, guys, froze again. If there's no further business, I can't imagine what my face probably looks like when I'm frozen on the screen. Anyone who's watching. If there's no further, did I get through I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Stay safe, stay healthy. See everybody. Bye-bye.
Two guys.
Good night.